These theories are so far away from everything we've learned thus far that now, well, before we attempt this little excursion into the world of new physics, you should try to free your consciousness completely, at least temporarily, from everything you've learned up until today.
Now we can start talking about dimensions. These wheels are some of the oldest symbols known. The only places that they've been found is on the ceilings of certain very old Egyptian tombs. They are always found in sets of 4 or 8, and nobody knows what they are. Even the most famous Egyptologists have no idea, but this is actually proof that the Egyptians not only understood the flower of life, but they lived it. Today, I'm going to show you what these wheels meant, and in future lessons, we will go over the details of this unraveling. There's a lot to cover before we get there though. For the record, the unraveling looks like this. Yeah, it's a doozy. So on the walls with these wheels are drawings of 7 people with animal heads. They are called neiters, and each of them has an orangish-red oval above its head. This is called the egg of metamorphosis. The neiters are showing us a time when we go through a certain stage of resurrection, which is a rapid biological change into a different life form. Not the average type of resurrection, I know. As you can see here, they're changing directions 90 degrees, and in doing so, they're changing dimensions. See, the dimensional levels are separated by 90 degrees. Musical notes are separated by 90 degrees. The chakras are also 90 degrees. It's a number that continually appears. Probably at this point we should get a common understanding of what dimensions are, like 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension. What are we talking about here? Most people think of dimension in terms of time and space, the X, Y, and Z axis, with time becoming the 4th dimension. This is not what we are talking about. What we're seeing as the various dimensional levels has more to do with music and harmonics than anything else. A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave, and in between there are 5 black keys. Together this creates what is called the chromatic scale, which is 13 notes, well actually 12, with the 13th being the first in the next octave. So from one C to the next is really 13 steps, not 8. This also correlates with the 7, 8, and 13 chakra system I mentioned in lesson 2. Keeping that in mind, I want to show you a sine wave. Sine waves correspond with light and the electromagnetic spectrum and the vibration of sound. We're all very familiar with this. In this entire reality we're in, every single thing is based on sine waves. There are no exceptions to this except for maybe spirit and void. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics looks at everything in the reality of one of 2 ways. You can look at anything, like the computer you're watching this video on, to be made up of tiny particles like atoms. Or you can forget about that idea completely and look at it as a vibration, a waveform, such as electromagnetic fields or even sound. If you look at it as atoms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. But if you look at it as waveforms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. Both of these systems come out of the flower of life, one being the one we just looked at, fruit of life to Metatron's cube and beyond, and the other being this beautiful mess of a picture. Just looking at it hurts my head. Everything in this world is a waveform, or can be seen as sound. All things, your bodies, planets, absolutely everything, are a waveform. If you choose this particular way of looking at reality, and then superimpose that view over the reality of the harmonics of music, we can begin to talk about dimensions. The dimensional levels are nothing but different base rate wavelengths. The only difference between this dimension and any other is the length of its basic waveform. It's just like a radio set. Turn the dial, you pick up a wavelength. It's the same with dimensions. If you were to change the wavelength of your consciousness, and in doing so change all of your body patterns to a wavelength different from this universe, you would literally disappear out of this world and reappear in the one you were tuned in. It's been theorized that the base rate wavelength that we're currently living in is 7.23 centimeters. There's a few reasons for this. In a spiritual sense, the 7.23 wavelength is Om, the Hindu sound of the universe. Maybe that's why Oming is such a powerful tool in meditation. Not only that, but if you were to take 100 people and measure the distance between their eyes, the average length is 7.23. Same with the distance from the tip of our chins to the tip of our noses, and the distance across our palms and between our chakras. This 7.23 length is located throughout our bodies in various ways because we are emerged within this particular dimension. There's another reason as well. Bell Laboratories found this wavelength when they were setting up the microwave system around the United States. They found static in their system because they chose a wavelength just slightly longer than 7.23 for their system. In order to get rid of this static, they did something that we as a planet are still suffering from. They upped the power 50,000 times over what we would normally need, which created a very powerful field, so that the 7.23 wavelength would not interfere. It's for those reasons that I believe 7.23 is the wavelength of our dimension. As you go up in dimensional levels, the wavelength gets shorter and shorter, with higher and higher energy. As you go down in levels, the wavelength gets longer and longer, with lower and lower energy, more and more dense. Just as with a piano, there's a space between the notes, so that when you hit one note, there's a very definite place where the next note is. In this waveform universe we exist in, there's a very definite place where the next dimensional level exists. Its specific wavelength relative to this one. Most cultures in the cosmos have a basic understanding of this and understand how to change between dimensions. However, because of certain events that happened on Earth 13,000 years ago, we have all forgotten, but we're about to remember. So if we show each note in the chromatic scale as a circle, we have 13 circles. Each circle represents a white or black key, and the shaded circle at the end would be the 13th note that begins the next octave. This circle here represents the third dimension. This is where we are, and this circle next to it would be the fourth. In lesson 3, we talked about channeling, and this is typically where channeled beings are. This is also where you explore when you are astral projecting or lucid dreaming. You'll notice now that the musical system goes upwards and downwards forever, octaves over octaves over octaves. Theoretically, this is how the universe goes too, an infinite spectrum of universes in both directions going upwards and downwards forever. I mean, come on, we thought our universe was big, but everything in our universe, as far as we can see, well, that's just this one dimension. You may have heard people talk about 144 dimensions and how 144 relates to other spiritual subjects. This is because there are 12 notes in an octave and 12 overtones between each note. 12 times 12 equals 144 dimensional levels. To be specific, there are 12 major dimensions and 132 minor dimensions within each octave, though in truth this progression probably goes on forever. The diagram we've been looking at represents one octave. The 13th note repeats, and then there's another octave after that. Looks like I'm about done for the day. I want to show you this. I was watching Ancient Aliens not long ago, and one of the natives who has communication with beings in higher dimensions told the man who was interviewing him
that they have always been here, even right here where we're sitting right now, but you just don't see them. They're in a different frequency.
And no one really got what he meant. So that's kind of a fresh perspective on that.
I would love to start this conversation because there's a lot to talk about and a lot of important things to talk about, especially at this time. Yeah. But there is the, let's start with, you wanted to start really with the dimensions, the different dimensions, and explaining us.
It's a perfect thing to begin discussing. The only thing is that for most audiences, I'm sure this one maybe is better than most, but for an average person, they wouldn't understand a lot of the things I'm saying if I don't talk about dimensions for just a little bit anyway. I don't want to get too technical in all of this, but yeah. In physics, just to give an overview of everything, in physics they have found 11 different dimensions, and their ideas of these dimensions are is that the XYZ axis is the first 3 dimensions, time is the 4th dimension, and using mathematics they've bent this around and come up with 11 different dimensions. They may come up with more, but right now they're up to 11. When I talk about dimensions using the same word, the connotation is completely different. I'm not talking about that. That's their ideas, but it has nothing to do with the universe. All the indigenous people all over the world, I can speak with them fluently because they understand what I'm talking about with this. When I'm speaking about dimensions, I'm talking about that the entire universe is made up of vibration, or just, and one way you can look at it is just sound or frequency. And one way of looking at the universe, there is nothing else. That's all there is. Well, the way that all these frequencies and vibrations interact with each other is just not at random, but they interact in exactly and precisely the same way that music does. So if you're looking at a chromatic scale and you see the notes of C and C sharp and D, etc., the distance between those different notes is all based on 11 cycles per second, which is how music is based on. And so all the notes in the chromatic scale are 11 cycles per second or multiples thereof. And so it's, when you apply that into the frequencies of the universe, that is how the universe organizes or structures itself. And so everything is a frequency and everything is harmonics of music. And so when we look at dimensions, we see them separated in exactly the same way music is. In the same distances between C and C sharp and D and etc. The universes are separated in exactly that same way. It was Bell Labs who figured out what the frequency of the 3rd dimension is. They found that out. It was a long story, but they calculated out. It was 7.28 centimeters, I believe it is. And once you know one of them, you can calculate all the rest of them and where they are. And they're just like television too, in that when you are on a television channel, you have an aerial so long that's receiving a certain message. It's a certain frequency. If you switch to another channel, it'll either be a shorter or longer wavelength. But when you do, you completely change the image that you're looking at. If you had the consciousness, and you were able to change the frequency of your consciousness as you were doing it, and there are people that can do this, you would, poof, disappear from here, and you would reappear in whatever frequency that you were tuned to. There is no difference. And so the whole universe has this separation based on music. And when you talk about angels, they live not on the third dimension, but on the fourth dimension. And they live in very specific overtones, which are the fourth, fifth, and sixth overtone of that particular harmonic frequency. And humans on that frequency have a connection also, and they're on the, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth overtone. And so humans and angels are on a fourth dimensional level. We're like neighbors. We're very close to each other. We've been close to each other forever, and so we have a relationship with each other that has existed beyond what we think of ourselves right now.
And what is that relationship?
Well, the angels and humans, the humans were on a higher level than them at one point, but about 13,000 years ago, we had a disturbance on Earth that we caused, that caused us to fall in consciousness, and we dropped way, way, way down from there to where we are now. Now humans think we're the greatest thing that were ever on Earth, and we have this ego that we think we're superior in the universe.
And the only one.
Yeah, the only thing here. And actually, we're kind of like a bug. We're on about the lowest level of consciousness you can be, and still be able to have the ability to climb back up into these things. Otherwise, it would take a lot of evolution to get to where we are.
Okay.
You will keep reincarnating as long as you don't learn how to die consciously, which means bringing your body with you. And if you bring your body with you, then that's it. It's over. That's the end of it.
Who taught us that?
How to do that?
Who taught us that?
What do you mean?
How do we know that it's important to die consciously? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, that goes back into Egypt, and even before that time, Egypt and India and Samaria, the whole focus, let's just go on Egypt for a moment, but the whole focus on Egypt was the dying process, the mummification, all that, because they knew that when they died, they had to bring their physical body with them to the next level, because the reason is because that body becomes a baby on the next level of existence. And so if you arrive without your body, which then, by the way, which begins to grow, you get taller, you get a lot taller, and you get this big head with these different color eyes, and the different skin changes, and you become, females are about 10 to 12 feet high, and males are about 14 to 16 feet high.
So it would be about 12?
Yeah, you'd probably be about 12, sure, maybe 12 and a half. And,
so that's in the fourth dimension?
That's in the fourth dimension, but that's what dying is going into the fourth dimension. But if you don't bring your body, you arrive without your physical form, and you eventually have to come back here, get another body, go through a lifetime, and learn how to die again. Most people here on Earth have been through this process at least 1,000 times or more, except for a lot of the new people coming in. This population growth that's come up very high.
Yeah.
And we've never had almost 7 billion people on Earth. We've only had, it's just going over 1 billion. It's never happened until just recently.
And is that too much?
That's another thing.
Topic.
It's another topic whether it's too much or too many. But that's what's happening. And a lot of these people that are coming in are new to being human. They're coming from other levels of existence, and most of them are very advanced souls that have chosen to come here. It wasn't that you got to go. It's not that. It's you have to decide to do it. And then when you get here, a lot of them go, okay, I realize that my brothers on Earth need help, and I'm going to go down here and help them. And then you get here and you go, oh my God, this is hard. Because they've forgotten what it's like to be in a physical, dense body. These people are coming out of light bodies. And so it's a huge, huge transformation.
Did you have to remember yourself that you were in this body?
I'm a little different than the majority of them coming in, is I have retained all my memories. And so I remember every minute coming from my other world to here. I remember everything. And I had to, in order to do what I'm doing, I had to remember that. Otherwise I would not be able, when I talk about other dimensions, I'm talking about from experience, not from a learning process. I know what the other dimensions are, and I've been in every single one of them, all 144 basic dimensions I've lived in. That's what a Melchizedek is. There's lots of Melchizedeks. In this galaxy, there's about 10 million, and but it's only one level of consciousness that everybody's connecting to. So the physical form doesn't matter what you look like; it's the consciousness level. And in order to be of assistance from a Melchizedek point of view, I had to remember exactly where I came from and why I'm coming here. So I remember.
What would you say your role is here on the planet? Why did you come back?
It's the same role with every Melchizedek that goes into any planet. What happens is a person begins close to the source and then begins living lifetimes, and they start coming down into deeper and deeper and deeper into the densities. And then when they get as deep as they can feel that they can possibly go, then they go back up. So we're talking about, everybody here is talking about ascension, moving higher.
Yeah.
But the higher beings have been coming down. They're going through descension, coming down to here.
Yeah.
And then once you've been through all those dimensional levels doing that, and you come back up and go through them again on another level, you get to the top, you have a choice. You can either go beyond this existence and back to the source, or you can take another trip around. And I chose another trip around. And when you do that, life says, aha, you're a Melchizedek. Okay, so you know how to go into all those dimensional worlds and be stable. So they use you to, whenever a planet or a sun or an area or even a galaxy or anything has a problem in their dimensional levels, they send Melchizedek because we know how to deal with those things. And you are having a hard time here getting from third dimension to the fourth dimension. You don't know how to do it. The Mayans just remembered only about 2 months ago. And they had forgotten how to do it, and they're pretty good at it. And
they just remembered, you said?
Well, the world knows that thinks that there's only 3 codices that in the whole world that the Mayans have, but they have just received 7 to 9 more, and in some of those it gave the exact instructions from their ancient past to their present time, precisely how to go interdimensional, and this is what they were waiting for. It just happened. They just told me, and so they're all excited about this.
And why are we learning this, and why are you here? Why do we need, is there something for us to learn right now, considering what's happening?
Really, it's not learning at all.
Yeah, remembering?
It's remembering.
Yeah.
We are all experts at this. We have all remembered, at least between the third and the fourth dimension. We know precisely how to do this. We've just had a bump in our head, and we've kind of forgotten. And so my job is just to be like a catalyst to remembering that, hey, remember when you did this thing? And so I'm just trying to remind you of something. Once you remember, you're going to go, oh yeah, of course, I've done this so many times before. And when you really get into the movement of it, you'll know exactly what to do. And that's, we're going to be fine through all of this. I know we will.
So you're saying in the movement of that, so there is the heart plays a role, there's an energy that we need to trust, there's something that we need to go towards or do.
If you're here and you have a physical body, you contain everything that you need on a physical level. You don't need anything external to your body. Your body has everything. And the body is far, far more than what we think it is.
I'm going to present to you some information which has never before been said about the Akashic records, because I'm not one of those who agrees with many of the experts as far as the Akashic records and the relation to interdimensionality is concerned. Conceptualizing of dimensions is something that the brain is concerned with. It's not something that the spirit is concerned with. But for the sake of the brain and explaining Akashic records, it's behoove us to go into the understanding of dimensions. As I've said before, dimensions are divided in terms of vibration. They're not a spatial concept. It's our brain which is meant to deal with space and time, meant to format wave function into space and time, that is really telling us that their dimensions are existing anywhere other than in the now. In reality, all dimensions exist on top of one another, in the same space. They're just different vibrations overlapped one on the other. So you are existing on all dimensions at all times. In my opinion, the Akashic records don't represent one dimension. That's what many people say. There's usually a consensus that the Akashic records exist on the fifth dimensional, or this kind of thing. But I don't think information is stored on one dimension or another dimension. So the way that it really works is that information is stored on the dimension which it corresponds to. So you could think of the entire Akashic record as a giant library, and let's say this library is source. Even though right now, as you're thinking about a library, you're probably thinking about a building. That's because the brain can't understand the concept of no beginning and no end, and it can't understand the concept of no borders. But if we're going to talk about about the Akashic records appropriately, we've got to give the brain something to latch onto. So let's call source the library. That's the ultimate dimension. All the dimensions within this library could be seen as different levels within a library. Just like when you go to a library, there's floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. The different dimensions could be seen as these levels in the library. And there's different information relative to each level. So, each successive floor in this library is more expansive than the floor below it. So each successive floor contains all the information in the floors below it, including new information relative to the expansion, or the expansive totality of unity consciousness. Accessing the Akashic records has to do with you increasing your vibratory rate so as to be a match to one floor, and then the next floor, and then the next floor, and so on. Alright, I'm going to give you an example. In the fourth dimension, which is the one just outside the third dimension, we have access to every thought which has ever been thought relative to this single lifetime, from your birth to your death. It also contains your thought form, which is basically the energetic self-concept you have of you, which is why when you get out of body in the fourth dimension, you will experience your energy body, which is an energy duplicate. It is an energetic duplicate of the third dimension, but it contains, the fourth dimension contains every thought which has ever been thought relative to your one lifespan. This third dimension is moment to moment. So even though our brains can conceptualize of the fourth dimension, that's why we have any concept of time. But the third dimensional reality is a moment-to-moment reality, meaning that all that exists is now, and now, and now. In the fifth dimension, every possible timeline from the single point that you've chosen for your third dimensional life exists. The symbology I like to explain with this is, if any of you have seen the movie Sliding Doors, in the movie the woman experienced missing a train. So the movie takes off on two different probability paths. In one probability path she makes this train and her life changes accordingly, and in the other one she misses the train and then her life continues along this path accordingly. So in the fifth dimension, you have all of the timelines which are possible for this single path which you've chosen from any point in your life. So that means not just from where you stand right now, but also all the probability paths which exist since you were born. As you can imagine, this is such a huge totality of information that the third-dimensional brain has absolutely no way of formatting this for you in an understandable way. So, within the timeline from your one birth to your one death, the fifth dimension contains all possibilities within that one path. You are collapsing the waves of probability in the fifth dimension into a fourth dimensional timeline. That is what you are doing to form your concept of your one life and the one path which has been taken by you in your physical life. In the sixth dimension, you are unlimited by space and by time. And so you can instantly experience a new timeline within that fifth dimension from any of the probabilities in the fifth dimension. So instantly you could switch to the outcome of what would have occurred if something back in your infancy had been totally radically changed. So if one of the probability paths that you didn't end up taking from a point, say, in which you were 6 months old, you could chase that all the way to the end and instantly experience the end result of that particular probability path. In the seventh dimension, the sixth dimension is treated almost like a single point. So there is no timeline anymore. The sixth dimension is one point where all possibilities in terms of timelines in our universe and all possible endings for our universe are contained. They are contained in the single point called infinity. So all possible timelines which could have or will have occurred since the birth of this universe, since the Big Bang, are contained in the seventh dimension. So every thought that's ever been thought relative to this universe is contained in the seventh dimension. So it might be at this point where you'll be asking, how can there be more than infinity? The answer is there can be other infinities. Other universes created under different conditions, and when other universes are created under different conditions, there are different laws which apply to that universe. So, different laws other than the law of gravity. So, in these other universes and other infinities, the laws are not the same. The basic laws are not the same, because the initial conditions creating those universes also aren't the same. So in the eighth dimension, that's where you begin to have access to the infinity relative to this lifetime of this universe as it relates to the infinity of another universe or other universes. In the ninth dimension, you have access to being able to instantly experience any probability path from any timeline of being in any universe instantaneously. So when you're entering the 10th dimension, many of us like to refer to the 10th dimension as the most expansive level of the library. So this is the top level. What you're going to be experiencing with the 10th dimension is all probabilities of all universes in the 9th dimension. And all of those probabilities of all the universes in the 9th dimension are treated now as a single point. So we could go even further than that. When you go even further than that, you kind of have the walls of these library, which aren't walls at all. So instead of being the levels within the library, we're now the library itself. Difficult for the third dimensional mind to conceive of, I understand, but when we're outside the 10th dimension, beyond, you're entering the 0-point field. So in the 10th dimension, all universes from the 9th dimension are treated as a single point, and in the 10th dimension, past the 10th dimension, you don't even have a point. What you have is this 0-point field, which is a sea of probability waves, which we would call source. That is the totality of collective consciousness, not the expressions of that consciousness. So it's important to understand that when we're exploring Akashic records, Most people are referring to a seventh dimensional experience. That is the frequencies of where past lives exist. So that would be the totality of probabilities which have occurred for one soul from its origin in this universe to its end in this universe. So it exists as sort of an energy record, a seventh dimensional energy record. So when most people are referring to this Akashic record, they're talking about a seventh dimensional experience. But I think it's more important to understand that when we're talking about the Akashic record, it contains much more than this. That's just one level of the library which you're going to. And if you're interested in past lives, the librarian, whoever that would be, would say go to the seventh floor, the seventh dimension. Like anything, you're limited by your beliefs, most especially when we're talking about the Akashic record, because you access information in the Akashic record, or these energetic frequencies, by becoming a match to those frequencies first. So you have to, A, believe that they exist. B, you have to believe that you can get there. C, you have to structure all of your belief patterns so as to let go of third dimensional reality in order to be a match to the Akashic record. So this is the same way as saying you're limited not only by your beliefs when it comes to experiencing the Akashic records, but you're also limited relative to your beliefs according to what information you draw out of or are a match to in the Akashic records. So those people who raise their frequencies higher and higher are a match to higher levels of the library.
At the end of the last century, someone discovered a way of getting a scientific grasp on eternity. Physicist Burkhard Heim developed a theory that made it possible to observe the world holistically with all its material and non-material processes. Postulating a 12-dimensional worldview, he succeeded not just philosophically, but in a mathematically calculable model in uniting the two aspects of life that have been dogmatically separated for centuries, matter and spirit. But how can we imagine a 12-dimensional world? Let's say that our life as we know it all takes place in a computer. We are all characters in a virtual 3-dimensional reality, a computer game, for example. Everything around us, colors, forms, objects, is 3-dimensional. All sequences and variations are programmed in a single time ray. As long as we don't interrupt the game, time passes in the linear fashion we are familiar with from our reality. Einstein called this virtual environment with 4 dimensions, including time, the space-time continuum. It is the world of our conscious experience. Burkhard Heim combined these dimensions in one space, or Raum in German, called R4. Remember, we're still talking about a computer here, so for anything at all to happen, we first need an operating system, the prerequisite for running any program. In Heim's model, the equivalent of the operating system would be what he calls structured space. X5 and X6 is what he calls the 2 dimensions that comprise structured space. Here, space and time already cease to play a role. Now, everyone would agree that without an operating system, the computer would be worthless. We wouldn't be able to play our game, in other words, to live our virtual world. For that, the computer needs additional data, the program itself, as well as numerous files, in which the visual appearance and the laws of our virtual world are pre-assigned and configured. All this information can be accessed at any time in the operating system's root directories. In Heim's model, these are the information spaces comprised of the dimensions X7 and X8. And finally, the computer itself has to be located somewhere too. It accounts for dimensions X9 to X12. In our model, this space is designation G4. It is the realm of the Creator, the omnipresent higher consciousness, the source of mystery, and the fundamental essence behind man's search for meaning and purpose in this world.
And I went through this model of the universe in 2004, and that structure that I drew is a replica of the real universe. So now I'll draw that universal structure again, and there may be some similarities, but I'll just explain the differences too. So let's say here on Earth, as you know, we've all been in what we refer to as the third dimension, okay? And I'll put a line there because it blends in, but, you know, there are lines that... Above that, we've got the fourth dimension. Now, the fourth dimension in physical size is the largest that exists in actual physical size because of the amount of separation that took place. Okay, this area is what's deemed the zone of free will. Okay? Then we have a thick universal membrane between the fourth and the fifth. Now, the reason that was created was for protection on a universal level. It's part of the divine plan, it's part of the creation structure, because evil does not exist above here. So evil only exists, what you call evil. It's the concept, right? I'm just using our labels that we're familiar with. Of evil only exists below this level. Okay? Above here, this is what's known as heaven. This is what you call heaven. In religious terms, in what you experience here on this level, the level of life here is so beautiful. Everything's in harmony. Okay? It is amazing. Now this realm, the fifth dimension, exists on this planet too. And you know it as Avalon, or Shambhala, or Shangri-La. It's got lots of names, okay? Then we have the sixth, seventh. Between the seventh and the eighth there's another universal membrane. Then we have the ninth. Then it goes the 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th, okay? So, these are the ones you really want to know about, and I'll explain that why. So, when I went up, I experienced the whole lot, and then I came back down, and what I discovered was that all these dimensional levels is what we refer to as creation. From inside this universe, universe, one verse, right? We think that that's creation, as from your perspective here, but it's not. Life is infinite. There's no end to it, as far as I can perceive. Even from right up the top dimensions, from up there, I couldn't perceive the end to life. It goes on and on and on. So, what I want to share with you is that this is what we call God. It's a being. Everything is a being, right? The planet is a being, the galaxy is a being, the trees are a being. This rock is a being. It's consciousness, experiencing itself, manifesting itself as such. Okay? Everything is life. So, this universe we are inside of is a being. And I'm here to tell you that there is life beyond God. So, this is the being and the creator of this universe in all its dimensional levels, and that's what we know as God. It's a being. But there is life beyond that. Now, remember, you know all this inside of you, so I'm not telling you anything new, I'm just helping you to remember, that's all. That's all I'm doing here. Okay? Now, think of yourselves beyond, because if this is here, I want you to know that you also exist beyond God. And I want you to know that each and every one of you are gods in your own right. Okay? Buddha and Jesus and Krishna, everyone says, "Know ye not gods, you are gods." And it doesn't mean you are God of this universe. What they're truly saying is you are gods of your own universes. But what you have done is you have come inside this universe to experience life in this way, in this construct. This is what we refer to as a waveform universe. Okay? Light, frequency, polarity. Okay? When you get to these higher realms, don't forget this is heaven compared to all this stuff down here. People think that's the light of God, you've reached God, heaven, it's all over. No way, it goes on and on, right? So each and every one of you are gods in your own right, but your construct, the way your universe is constructed, is not like this one. This is unique. And think of us all on the God level, right? So we're all hanging out, each one of us are gods, got your own universe happening. And so this God starts expressing itself in a new way, right? And everyone goes, now that's cool. That is cool. I want me some of that. I want me some of that. So God said, if you guys want to learn how to be like me, then I'm going to come up and formulate something so you can learn how to be like me. So God created what's called the grand creation, the divine plan, the will of God. Okay? And created a formula for everyone to enter inside that being and experience life in waveform structure. Now, where you all entered this universe is here on the 9th dimension. This is what is considered the nursery, don't know about my spelling, of the souls. Everybody enters on this level. It's the nursery of the souls. It's where everybody first experiences waveform, or light, the light of God. And everybody comes in and acclimatises on that level. From there begins the journey. And you go into the 8th dimension. This is where you function on your own, but as pure energy. It's no physical form, it's just pure energy. And then once, just imagine now none of this exists yet, okay? You've just entered and you're experiencing yourself on your own because you're held here in a stasis, okay? And this is your soul. Soul is the highest form of ego in existence. Everybody thinks here on earth, ego, everything just outside of that, no ego. That's not true. Okay? You have ego on every single level, all the way up to your soul. Your soul, your I am presence, what we call the I am presence, the highest connection you have with God, you are still your own identity. Is that right? Well, you have your own identity apart from the source. It's what makes you you. Okay? Because if you didn't have that individual identity, you would not exist. So just contemplate that. So this is the highest form of ego in existence, is soul, and that's where it resides, the I am presence. And the I am presence extends itself down into here. Okay, so that encapsulates these two dimensional levels. Then, once all possibilities and outcomes were experienced by all of us on these levels, we then said, hey, we want to take this to the next level. This is fun. A lot of people are having fun. This is a good ride. So God said, hang on, because the next level from here, if you want to take this journey, it's pretty full on. It's exhilarating, it's fun, but it's full on. So let me just create a huge void as a protective membrane for me, because I know what's coming. Because don't forget, I know me, and you want to be like me, then look out, because there's traps involved with being me, being like me. So everyone then went, yeah, we want some of that, and extended themselves down. And that is the highest level of physical structure, is the 7th dimension. Like, if they turned up here, like, I mean, a being from here turns up now on Earth when it was in the 3rd dimension, you just see a being of light. Okay, because it's vibrating higher than this frequency. Okay? So be aware of that. It turns up and it looks beautiful and it's vibrating light. Be aware of it. Just doesn't mean it's a pure loving being just because it does that. So, once all possibilities and outcomes, because that was a big rush, going from pure energy to physical structure was a really huge rush for everybody. Everyone loved it. And once all possibilities and outcomes were experienced there, everyone said, right, we're going to take this to the next level. And so, down again. And then same again, and then got to the fifth dimension. But once the lower vibrations of the fifth were begun to experience, there were major differences of opinion that occurred between beings. There was still no killing or death or destruction or anything like that, but we're talking major differences of opinion. And so the polarities started becoming really extreme. Beings started not liking other beings. Beings started wanting to control other beings. And it's like, wait a minute, this ain't right. But when I say control, it's nothing like, you know, control here. I mean, don't forget this is heaven. But I remember in scriptures and that they talk about the angels had a war in heaven and all that. It's just differences of opinion, okay? So what God did was said, the next journey down into the lower vibrations is going to be so profound and so traumatic that once you enter that, there's only going to be one way out. One way out. If whoever wants to play this game, whoever wants to go on this roller coaster ride, I'm not stopping that roller coaster. Okay? Once you're on that ride, you're in it for the long haul. And that's what you've all chosen. Okay? So, a being popped up. Because the way God operates is, who wants to manage this? Who wants to run that? Who wants to be a part of it? So it's a participatory process. Okay? So, this being puts its hand up and says, I want to run one side of polarity. And I want it to be really full on. I want a being to be able to destroy another being. So let's make it really exhilarating, really intense, really exciting. And that's the being that you know as Lucifer. Okay? So this is where the division starts between dark and light. And that version of light is not what you think either. That's conditional love. Conditions apply without love. You do as I say, and I'll be nice to you, but if you cross my path, you better look out. I'll take you out. That's conditional love. Okay? All right? As long as you do as I say, I'll be good to you. It's imperialism. Okay? So, this is the Lucifer energy here, and this is the Michael energy here. All right. Now, once we got to this point here, this is what we think is the zone of free will. Okay? Now that's really important that I said think is the zone of free will, because this part of you here, what we refer to as the higher self, which spans these three, and you can be omnipresent here, you can be in many places at once, right? The higher self, down here, you organised your whole journey down in these lower universes. And we're talking, some people have been down here for eons of time. I've talked to beings who have been here from the beginning, when they were first created. Earth time, trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions times trillions billion years ago, Earth time equivalent. Okay? It's been a really long time, and a lot of people, you see it in their eyes, they're tired. I've had enough, I want to go home. And it's true, a lot of us feel that way, don't we? We've had enough, we want to go home, yeah. Yeah. Some of us haven't been down here for this long, and they're freaked out too, because the way life is down here in these lower vibrations is just too much. You don't like it at all. They haven't been down here long, and they're not used to all the bad things that go on down here. That's what was created. And it was a journey into vast separation. Vast separation. Never experienced before. Now here's another big surprise for you. Each one of you who is incarnated on Earth here is actually a galaxy. Sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? That is how beautiful each and every one of you are. All the beings that are incarnated on here on Earth at the time are also galaxies. Really, people will say, oh, there's probably about 2 billion galaxies in existence. Crap, there's a lot more than that. There's trillions of galaxies in existence in these lower universes, and there's more than that too. So you are all co-creators already, because the way God operates, you come down here, you take responsibility. It's not like we have kings and queens in our world here, where they do take a fair bit of responsibility, but when you're a king and a queen out there, the way we do it properly is when you manifest a galaxy, when you want to become a king or a queen of a galaxy, and that's just labels, king, queen, it's just to get the concept with you. Your energy stream of your being goes into manifesting that galaxy, and your energy stream of your being manifests all the planets, right? Is the foundation for all the planets, because other beings come into your galaxy and experience the way your galaxy vibrates, and they manifest themselves as a planet and a star, and it's just multi-layered like that. We all go inside each other and experience each other in the different ways we express one another. Okay? So we're more interconnected than you can possibly imagine. Everyone says, yeah, we're all one, it's all beautiful and everything. Wow, you know. You have people that you fight with, you can understand that you're sorting out karma because you two were two galaxies at war on another level way back when. And you're sorting out all that karma. It goes on and on and on. It's really expansive. So, we took this journey down here and God said, we're going to expand, but then one day we're going to start funneling everything into singularity again. And what pops out the other end are creator gods. So you're gods in your own right, but not in this universe. You're in the process of becoming God. We are gods in the making. Okay? Now you all have your Christ center. Okay? That is the consciousness of this universe. That is a seed that was planted inside of you when you first made contact here. Okay? That Christ center is a seed, and within the next 4 years that seed is about to sprout. All right? You want to call it Buddha, you want to call it Krishna, you want to call it Quetzalcoatl, you want to call it the rainbow serpent, you want to call it the green man, you want to call it Pan, you can call it Ra, you can call it anything you like. It's describing the same thing. Different culture, different time, different interpretation. Okay? Everyone's talking the same language, really. So once we went through the journey of expansion and went through all these horrendous wars and exhausted all possibilities of an outcome on the fourth dimension, a third dimensional paradigm was created. And as we're stepping down, we're getting into a slower waveform, right? Which means more density as well. So the higher vibration, the lower the vibration, the more density. Molecules vibrate slower, the more dense the matter becomes. God said, right, we're going to start bringing everything back together, because this is inside God, and this free will zone, right, people think they got free will, really, because the whole thing was designed down from up here, don't forget that. This higher self aspect of you planned the whole life and the outcome, okay? So you're roaming this planet with free will, then you've got to think about that, okay? Because once you get in touch with your higher self, you then know, realise and know for sure that we do not have free will down here. We just think that we do. That's an illusion of the lower ego, okay? And it needed to be that way. We needed to go through that illusion. Separation, okay? And people don't like that because everything they do that's bad, they can then no longer blame anybody else but themselves. Okay? They can't blame anybody else. It's nobody's fault but mine. Everything I've done, everything I've been, in all this area here, it's all me. It's all of my own making, of my own doing. So, God then decided, I'm going to take this project on now, hands-on. And the feminine and the masculine aspects of the Creator decided to manifest themselves as galaxies. And they did that. And the feminine aspect of the Creator, the Divine Mother, manifested herself as our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. And it is termed as such because of the nurturing of the mother's milk. The male aspect of the universe manifested itself as the Andromedan galaxy. And in Greek, the word andros means husband. And the Andromedan galaxy is the one right next door to ours. So you've got the masculine and the feminine, the divine, sacred couple. Everybody from all these different galaxies, right, then came in to this one galaxy because the call went out. The call went out to all the beings who are ready to return home and make this journey to become a creator God. So all the spiritual hierarchy in all these galaxies worked out which beings were going to represent each galaxy and come into this galaxy. So each star system in this galaxy is a settlement or a condensing down and a representation of a galaxy. So you've gone from a galaxy, compressing it down into one star system. Okay? So we're on the road to compression and more density. From there, everybody came into the galaxy, and so now you've got all these differences of separation being compressed into one galaxy. And we had a lot of wars that took place in the galaxy in the beginning because there's a lot of jostling for elbow space and positions of power and what have you. And it was a pretty painful time. But then it got to the point where it had to be compressed down to the next level again. And the universal consciousness and its masculine and feminine then said, right, we are going to take control of this firsthand again, and we're going to manifest ourselves as a star system. And so the male aspect manifested itself as the Orion League. Okay? And in Egyptian mythology, that is Osiris, or the hunter. Okay? Which is really another aspect of this guy anyway. Remember, we're talking about the universal creator. Okay? That's what this represents too. That picture there. Okay? So, and the feminine manifested herself as Sirius, which is also known as Isis. They've got other names in other cultures. I'm just sharing the ones I'm familiar with, okay? Every culture has this knowledge hidden in it. Now, what took place in Orion was so profound, was the masculine energy compressing itself right in. So all the warring, all the controlling energies of that masculine energy was played out in what we call the Orion Wars. And that's what the Star Wars series is all about, that energy. It was one of the most painful and horrific times ever because it really needed to be sorted out once and for all. Of course, it's still in the process of happening, as you're well aware, but a big chunk of it was transmuted in the Orion League through that era. So, that is why we have in Egypt the 3 pyramids. Because they are a fractal of the Orion's belt, and Osiris came to this planet a bit over 12,500 years ago as Ra and built those pyramids to anchor that masculine energy into this plane. That's what those pyramids do. You'll hear all sorts of stories about those pyramids. But they anchor the male energies into the earth plane. All that war, all that control, all that horrendous energy, because what was happening was masculine and feminine needed to go to the next level. And they manifested themselves as our sun, which is known as Horus, and as Earth, which is known as Hathor. Okay, in the Egyptian pantheon. Now you can pick up a book in today's world, you go to the library or whatever, pick up a book, they won't tell you that Hathor was the embodiment of Mother Earth. They won't tell you that, because that's a secret, because, you know, we've got to suppress the feminine, got to suppress the truth. Okay, so again, I'm coming from a place like, everything I share with you here today, you do with as you will. Okay? If you don't want to accept anything I say, I'm at peace with that. But I'm not going to sit here and tiptoe through the tulips with you. I'm not going to sit here and express myself in such a fragile way that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I truly don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but if I say something that nudges your belief system, then I'm sorry about that, because we're right at the business end of the cycle, and the truth needs to be shared. And I'll just lay my cards on the table. So in the pantheon, Osiris and Isis come together and have a son called Horus, okay? And that is the sun. Jesus Christ, Son of God. Horus and Jesus are the one being, okay? The Divine Mother manifests herself as the earth because, and this is the Adam and Eve and the serpent business with God. You are taught that Eve was seduced by the serpent and fell into a low vibration. That is the biggest load of cod. They formulated a plan together. See, that other story gets told to once again undermine the feminine, to show her that she's weak, that she's easily conned, and it just takes away the real hero in all of this. Because this guy here, he's getting a lot of attention, right? But the real one, when he comes along, he's going to tell you who the real hero is. Feminine is the real hero in all of this, because she manifested herself as a planet that was going to see the very last vestiges of this plan play itself out. She volunteered to manifest herself into a planetary body where everyone can incarnate on. She volunteered to be raped, to be pillaged, to be plundered, to be tortured, to be poisoned, to be beaten. And not for a short period of time, not just for a few thousand years. This has been going on for millions of years. So if any big fella wants to stand up in front of me and talk tough, I'll tell you who's the toughest of them all. That's the Divine Mother. That's the Divine Feminine. There is no other being in this universe that is as courageous, that is as strong, that is as nurturing, that is as unconditional loving as that woman, as the Divine Mother. She's my hero because I know the magnitude of her journey. And I assure you, over the next few years, as you awaken and you reconnect with your true heart, your Christ centre, that you will come to know this. And I'm not standing up here preaching. You all know this already. You've just forgotten. And you will automatically come to know this over the next few years. I assure you of that. She's the real hero. So, the pyramids anchor that masculine energy into this earth plane. That's what needed to happen. So we can play all this crap out. Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to share with you. People say to me, but I don't have this connection with the Divine Mother. I don't feel her. You are so intimately connected with her. I'll run this as an example for you. In the church, they hold up... I've been Christian Greek Orthodox, by the way. But I'm into Christianity, I'm not into churchianity. There's a big difference between the two. So, they hold up the wafer and they go, this is the body of the Christ and the wine is the blood of the Christ. And they go through this thing called communion. Well, first of all, where did that wafer come from? It came from the earth. It was grown from wheat, comes from the earth. Where'd the wine come from? Comes from grapes, was grown from the earth. Everything you eat, you know, people give thanks around the table. What do they give thanks to? A male god. Everything you consume, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, everything comes from Mother Earth. Your body is made up of the organic matter of the earth. That's how intimately connected you are to her. You're inside that body which is of the earth, of the Divine Mother. And people don't get it. People don't understand how closely and how intimate that relationship is. Yeah. Now, so it's compression from expansion into the lower universes, down to 2 galaxies, down to 2 star systems, down to 1 singular star system and a planetary body. That's the journey we've all taken. And where are we headed? That's where you come from. Everyone's an ET. We're all in this generic form called the human embodiment.